Thank you. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning and certainly to be able to say a few words on these important topics. My declaration is a little bit different, I think, perhaps, than some of the ones you've heard. And what I'm interested in is our reach out beyond our own profession and advocacy, particularly from the position of culture-based sustainable development. We put together the summit, LAF as the lead, and my role here is to seek to provide some global context, motivation, and avenues for our collective actions toward a hopeful, equitable future. For 3 decades, I've had the opportunity in various venues through many organizations and invitations to work with others across the planet, starting first in my own country and for the last 15 years through ICOMOS, IFLA, and UNESCO, toward these kinds of conversations that bring us together. The first key learning is you have to show up. Showing up is sometimes an issue of commitment and sacrifice, and when UNESCO calls and says, can you be in Rio in 2 weeks? You have to kind of look at your schedule, find some space, and go do that. The thing that's interesting is that it's always a collaboration, and in many of these fora, I have found few of my peer-to-peer relationships, but many other disciplines. We also have to address the sustainability of cultural and natural assets and integrate that. We've heard that a couple of times today. I think my issue is that culture comes with it, its traditions, its practices, and all of the challenges of mobility of the 21st century. A small factlet that came in the World Bank news in my inbox 2 weeks ago was that 5 million people a month are moving to cities looking for a better life. 5 million a month. Embracing the UNESCO historic urban landscape approach is important to me because culture, tradition, and practice and what we inherit from prior generations puts us in a position of unification with our place. And in a world of mobility, this issue of unifying with place and being able to create cohesive society is even more important. Within this framework, I've had the opportunity to work toward and align with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, and I'll speak to that as my primary message here today. So I work with the triple bottom line, and my model says culture permeates environment, economy, and society, and that when we think about sustainability and divorce it from its place, its people, its inherent values, we have really shortchanged the opportunity. Landscape architects both embrace and ignore sustainability. In this, it's an easy shift to go from the objects to the assets, or the concepts to the assets. And what I'm very interested in is this parity, looking to the dialogue we hear all of us every day on economy. Can we shift our work toward asset? Can we stop talking resource and frame asset and make that actionable and make that measurable? When we are obsessed with form and aesthetics, we marginalize our impact. We need to be holistic. We need to bring forward some clear bottom line performance like the studies that LAF has been spearheading and move us into that realm. The UNESCO Historic Urban Landscape Recommendation Hull of 2011 started in 2005 with a meeting in Vienna where the stage was full of men, white, and starchitects. About halfway through the proceedings, I took the microphone in what's called an intervention, and I said, I think that it's important for us to talk a minute about landscape. What landscape gives us is 52, 56, 58% of the space of cities. Vienna is 52, Washington, D.C. 56, other cities more or less. But what I said was what we look at in our standards for looking at cultural landscapes begin with land use, look at spatial organization, topography, circulation, vegetation, natural systems, all the way down to the details. And what happened was this text made it into the final document 6 years later. The only one in the room speaking to those issues was me. So I had the opportunity 3 years ago to work with the World Bank on a project in India activating the 4 Hull tool groups: community engagement, knowledge and planning, and regulatory systems, possibly not only laws, but traditional systems and practices that apply to the land and apply to communities, and financial tools. So looking at these things together, we see, okay, we're good with knowledge and planning, we're pretty good with community engagement, not so good with regulation, not so good with finance. Those are areas where we need to partner. So when I was given the project, the format had 13 steps and they were linear. I said, this is not gonna work, it's not an auspicious number, there's too many. Okay, so how about 5? What if we said, all right, so it's a cycle, and any city can enter that cycle at any relationship, and within that, we engage the community toward inclusive urban revitalization for India heritage cities, and the first step, or the revisitation step, is to recognize those elements of the city beyond the monumental, beyond those in the archaeological survey, that are valued by those who live there. So that process helped me to understand the World Bank's twin goals, which are poverty alleviation and sustainability. And then to figure out how to help in the place on the planet that Francesco Banderin, the director of culture, says has the greatest concentration of heritage on Earth. So moving to 2 years ago, IUCN and ICOMOS developed an initiative toward connecting practices. IUCN is the World Conservation Union, and ICOMOS is the International Council of Monuments and Sites. These are the nature and culture advisors to UNESCO and World Heritage. Traditionally, those are silos. We set aside, we divide, we work in our areas of expertise. This model is talking about the overlaps and the intersections of biological diversity and cultural diversity, natural habitats, human-shaped habitats, tangible, intangible, and how all of these connect. Moving to September 25th, 2015, when the Pope gave his address to the United Nations, the next action, if you turned it off after the Pope, was the approval of this. If we go back to 2000, for the first time, the countries on Earth decided that they could put together some goals, and they put together the Millennium Development Goals. They were about poverty alleviation, hunger alleviation, health, gender equality, things that to us didn't really sound so central. They also didn't have targets and performance measures, and they were quite soft and made some impact in some countries. Coming up to 2015, Irina Bokova, the UNESCO Director General, said, tangible and intangible heritage are sources of social cohesion, factors of diversity, drivers of creativity and innovation, and urban regeneration. We must do more to harness this power. The Millennium Development Goals didn't use the word culture. So I've been working with a cadre of colleagues helping UNESCO culture bring forward the culture into the post-2015 agenda, which spans 15 years. These are the goals. I think we can all recognize a number of these as being right up our alley and others being things we can work with and overlap with. In particular, I would say perhaps affordable clean energy, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, and life on land are right into our skill sets and move us forward appropriately, allowing us to help rise to the massive challenges we find. An example, I was invited by the Mohammed Juma, who's in this, the top left side, third in, who's the Director of Urban and Rural Planning for Zanzibar, to do a workshop in Stonetown and Nagambo, its buffer zone. And I had the opportunity in that engagement to sit with him after the workshop, having had a half day in the countryside, and said, Mohammed, you can't do this at the scale of the precious World Heritage. It's an island. I see teak being harvested. I don't see it being planted. I see villages not well planned. You need to do an island-wide planning. So 6 months later, the draft of this was in my inbox. And he was looking at activating all the functions of Hull, the 4 tool groups, deep community engagement, and the ability to perhaps bring forward a case study that will be helpful to us as we go along. Goal 7, the siting of renewable energy. I think we can contribute to this. We saw Dirk's amazing presentation. I think there are smaller scale issues, and here we were able to do a pretty substantial solar field at a National Historic Landmark in Vermont. Sustainable cities and communities is target 11.7, particularly to provide accessible, inclusive, green public space. And target 11.7 is totally central to our work. I've had the opportunity to enumerate the benefits of public open space for UNESCO culture in a paper that I just wrote as one of the 12 leads going into Habitat 3, titled Inclusive Public Space, and do a worldwide view of the benefits, categorizing them under economy, society, and environment. The thing that's interesting about Rio is that when I was there to help them in 2009 frame their World Heritage nomination, we framed it around the landscapes. The city is the buffer zone, so it can continue to morph as long as the sea, Roberto Burle Marx' important seaside parks and beaches, and the Tijuca Forest and Botanical Garden can be protected and managed effectively. Goal 13, climate action. 14, life below water and life on land, is in part of the work we're doing right now in Jackson Park, the park where the World Columbian Exposition was held in 1893, probably the first American brownfield project. 1895 plans after the demolition of the fair. The Olmsted brothers did soils plans so they would know they had soil to plant in. This work is a collaboration of Project 120, who brought us on board, the Chicago Park District in the Army Corps, and we're rebuilding this failed, important urban landscape to meet the dual goals of Olmsted character and habitat integration based on the funding source and the approval process. In addition, it's next to the South neighborhoods, 5 of them, some of which have very high crime rates and a lot of gang activity, and we're using this park and this work as an urban uplift device into the future. The last 2, Goal 16 for peace, justice, and strong institutions, and Goal 17 for partnerships, offer pivotal constructs for our project, for our progress. And all of these goals together are quite actionable. Jane Jacobs says, in this urban century, recall that cities have the capability of providing something for everybody only because and when they are created by everybody. We have an opportunity to collaborate, move this all forward, and really gain some traction. We have a number of fora coming up. The Transforming Our World is available to you on the web, the UN 2030 Agenda. I hope some of you have read it. I hope more of you will read it. The City We Need and the World Urban Campaign has issued its agenda for the future. UN Habitat, the Zero Draft, is currently open for comments. IUCN and ICOMOS are having a World Conservation Congress, the first time in the United States, in Hawaii. And there is a nature culture journey as a part of that, where I'm speaking. And UN Habitat at Quito is coming up in October. There's an interesting metaphor here. We can be outside protesting that this is happening in the room. We can be here listening, or we can be up here trying to orchestrate. I think we need all those positions, but I think there is a larger community we have to participate in. Thank you.